How you doing, folks? Welcome to Forge and Brush Gaming channel here on YouTube. Got another video for you. This one's about Triumph, a set of miniatures rules for the Ancients and Medieval period, historical set of rules. And this set of rules, I have to point out, has really inspired me. So much so that it's got me back into Ancients gaming, painting up figures and getting all set for some new, fresh battles. Some of you guys might know I go back quite a ways. I was a big fan of DBM and DBA back in the day, and I played a lot of others as well, like Impetus and such. But I always had a fondness for DBX style games. And it wasn't until Triumph, I come across this maybe a couple months ago, that I really got excited once again. So I just dug out my feudal English army, which I've had for years. And I put them together, did some repairs, a little bit of rebasing, not much of that, but I've tidied them up, got them back into action. And as a result of that, I got 2+ armies worth for Triumph. Now, Triumph, it's spiral bound, which makes it awesome for the gamer. You can lay it out flat, so easy. Love that. 68 colored pages, glossy, a decent sized font so it's easy on the eyes. And this is by Washington Grand Company, and I'll put the link in the description below, as well as their YouTube and Facebook groups, which are welcoming and just a great bunch of folks. I highly recommend the YouTube channel for Triumph. You can look that up, and again, I'll put it in the description. Great set of videos on how to play the game, everything about basing, everything you could need. In fact, that's basically my main instruction was that initially, and got me into it. I went on to get this fine set of rules. And we're going to take a look at it today. We're going to do a little flip through. Not really a review. It's kind of early for that. I've only been playing a few games so far. Although with that said, I'm really enjoying it. We're going to take a look at it and see what you're getting when you get your hands on Triumph. This fantastic set of historical miniatures rules. So yeah, let's jump into this, folks, and see what's going on with this set of rules called Triumph. All right, let's take a look at this. Triumph. Rules for tabletop battles in the ancient medieval periods. Let's see what the back of the cover is. Right there, you can see that. A little bit more background by the Washington Grand Company. Not a bad price, $30. You can get this as a hard copy, much cheaper as a PDF. Page count isn't bad. Let's see, we're talking 68 pages of rules. Not bad at all for a miniatures game. Of course, this is version 1.1, 2019. And here's a breakdown of all the chapters, the contents, what's going on here. We got an introduction, turns of the game. We've got the sequence of play, very important. Tactical movement phase. Now we're getting into the details. Over here we've got ranged combat, we've got the close combat phase, combat results chapter, outcome moves, very important, any DBX style game, and appendices, very useful stuff. And yeah, we've got our overview, game materials. You don't need much. If you already got an army, you're all set to go. Standard basing of DBX throughout, although there is some minor changes with some of the troop types. Even if you play DBA or DBMM, you might have to reclassify some of your troops and hence rebase them. Not a big issue. I mean, in my feudal English army, I only had one unit type that had to be rebased, and that was not an issue. And the basing actually makes sense in this more than it does in a lot of DBX games. So there is that. Basic gameplay works the same as like DBA. You've got roll for command points, your pips. Then you go to your tactical movement phase, ranged combat phase, and close combat phase. That's where the meat of the game is right there. Whoever goes first depends on some various pre-game deployments and so on and so forth. But that's your basic sequence. Very familiar with DBA, you will definitely be familiar with this. Introduction and definitions of the game. Really useful. What is the game board? Victory conditions. How do you win? Usually it's 16 points of destroying your enemy's troop types, their point value. You're going to be declared the winner. So it's that kind of thing. It's very similar to DBA, except it's in elements and not points. Measuring distances, it's again pretty standard at 15 mil. It's going to be half a base width. So typical base width is 40 millimeters if you're familiar with DBM or DBA gaming. So half of that is your movement unit. You might use some measuring sticks specially made for that show little movement units of 20 mil a piece. Yeah, not a big deal. I have some of those. I might show them off. And it's twice as much for 28 mil. So your normal frontage would be 80 millimeters. And half of that, 40, would be your measuring unit. So it works very similar. And it's got the standard board sizes. 2x3 basically for 15 mil is what you would be using. Defines your board edges, what they are. Army composition. So all this stuff is very well laid out. And there's lots of little design notes you'll see here that stand out from the main rules. Here's your troop types. There's 26, I believe, 26 or so troop types, which is quite a few. Just enough, actually, for this game. If you're covering ancient medieval warfare, yeah. It defines the edges of bases. So everything is laid out and clear. One unique thing with Triumph is it uses battle cards. They're basically special abilities of a particular army during a particular time period. It allows you to simulate specific armies or battles. Great stuff. Things like shield wall or dismounting mounted troops. You would buy these as part of your points allotment for your army, if they're available for your army. That's very important to know. And I should point out that the army lists for this game are free. They're known as Meshwesh on the Triumph website. You can go there, look up your army, boom, there you go. It tells you everything you need to know to play. Your terrain type, your composition, your minimums, your maximums, battle cards that might be available, and so on and so forth, as well as a listing of your plausible enemies and allies. You can take allies in this game. It's pointed out right here, allied contingents. Again, if you're very familiar with DBX gaming, very similar. It uses a point system. That is not similar to DBA anyway, but it is to DBM. 6-sided dice, one apiece per player, obviously. Lots of little design notes, of course. I like these little pictures. My only complaint is I wish they would put the army or the units or what this is representing in here in the pictures. Sadly, they don't include that. I know I've seen some pictures that, oh, that army looks pretty cool, but I really don't know who it is. So I can do a little bit of research, I guess. Terrain pieces are defined, how big they are. They basically occupy a square rectangle area. If it fits within it, it counts as that type of terrain, i.e. large, small, etc. And here's where it defines those pieces of terrain and where they can go. Your camps, got to have your camps, where they can go. Here it talks about terrain cards, how they work. Basically, before the battle, you draw this card, and this tells you where on the battlefield, and the battlefield is divided up into 6 square areas here, where on the battlefield terrain pieces can be placed. So it's very quick, very easy. The game setup or deployment, however you want to call it, is quite involved here. These cards add a little aspect of fun and simplicity to your games, which is really welcome, to be honest with you. It goes into setting up a game. This is what you do before you set up your battle, or as you set up your battle, before you actually begin rolling dice and moving stuff. How many pieces you can take, attacker, defender, that kind of thing. You can see the different types of terrain here. Arable, forest, hilly, steppe, dry, marsh, delta, so on and so forth. Again, these are based on your army that you're playing. How to place those terrain pieces. Another thing to note about the rule book, everything is very clear. Everything is very concise, but it's also well organized, much like you'd find with, say, a board game, like Rule 26.1, right there. Rule 26.7, right there. So Rule Section 26 is all about placing terrain. So it's very well laid out. I welcome that. That is awesome. Makes finding things quick, easy during a game. So, yeah. Deployment. Turn sequence and command points. That's your pips. You roll d6 to see how many pips you have available. Command cost for moves in difficult terrain. Moving through difficult terrain will cost you extra command points, so on and so forth. Tactical movement phase. This is where you're moving your groups or your independent stands, as they're called, as opposed to elements. Covers columns, whole section for that, whole section for group moves, single stand moves. I played this game, of course, a few times now, and again, I have to say that these sections are so welcome. It's so well defined. If you've ever read DBA or DBMM, you know there is a little bit of a learning curve getting used to the way the rules are written and presented. You don't have that issue here. Talking about columns and march moves, passing through friendly units. Another unique thing about this game is that it fixes a lot of issues that you might find, that I've had occur in my DBX games. It fixes them. Like the confusion of when you're conforming to somebody that contacts you is always a weird thing in a lot of circumstances. This does away with that. It fixes it, in my opinion. And it's also the way it's written and organized is so much better than what you might be used to with DBX. I really appreciate that. Triumph is pretty awesome regarding that. Breaking off from close combat, flank contact. Breaking off from close combat, rear contact. So it's really going into detail here, and these small little chunks of rules, easy to digest, that covers a lot of the small things and the important things that can occur during a game. Everything about zone of control is here, very important. A wheel aligning with enemy stands, important when you're engaging in combat. The movement options you have when you're in an enemy zone of control. Zone of control, of course, is a base width square. So at 15 millimeter scale figures, it's going to be 40 millimeter square. So very typical to DBX. What else have we got here? Moving into close combat covers that very well. It's even got some examples here. Road moves, and so on. Then it comes into the ranged combat phase. Now this is different than your typical DBA game. This handles it much easier and simpler. And basically it's just both sides are going to be rolling dice, your d6, adding your combat factor for ranged combat, whether you're the target or you're the shooter. And you have to get like the normal combat results you'd expect like in melee combat, where you get a fallback or something, or you destroy the enemy if you double them. Those kind of results are what you're going to get with shooting, but it's all diced for. When a stand shoots at an enemy, no matter how many stands are shooting, they all roll individually. There's no like, okay, I got 3 elements shooting at this guy. One will be the shooter, the other 2 are going to be basically aiding the shooting. It's just during the shooting phase, starting with the defending player, the non-active player, actually. He will shoot with all his stands first, and then it goes to the active player's turn. He shoots with all of his elements, or stands, and yeah, that's how it works. Important to note, there's only probably about 4 stand types or unit types that actually can shoot. So yeah, ranged combat, that's basically how it works. It's got arc of fire, it's got line of sight. There's your arc of fire, very similar to DBX. Here we got some more illustrations, a path to the shooter, which is basically half a base width from a corner in the center point of the shooter. It also defines if you get flank or rear missile shots on the enemy, which is important. It can be much more beneficial to shoot someone in the rear. And then you got outcome results from this, just like you would with melee combat, which you'll look up and apply the results. Get into close combat. Here's where the real meat of the game is. There we go. It's defining flanks and so on and so forth. Nice little picture there. Gotta love it. Overlaps, so on and so forth. They provide a penalty to the opponent's combat factor. Rear support, like with pikes, that's in here. And close combat and difficult terrain, always crucial for certain unit types. Very important. Another important distinction of Triumph is that units, when they're contacted, don't turn to align. It's the moving side, the active side, that makes the contact. It's his responsibility to align with the targets. There are some exceptions, such as group movement on single enemy elements, in which case the single enemy element has to conform to the group. That kind of thing. Very good stuff. I like it. Rules on fighting the camp, of course. And the all-important combat results goodness, and here it is. And that's pretty much your combat results right there for the different dice results. Now it's defining and describing outcome moves, what they might be. You've got pass-through, what's that? Fallback, usually combat results. Pushbacks, also a combat result. Panic, that can happen where units run a little bit further away from the enemy. Destroyed, how we love that, yes. Pursuit, outcome moves such as knights, pushing forward into the enemy and following up. That happens here. We got evades, and so on and so forth. And that's the nuts and bolts of the game right there. Appendices, we got all kinds in here, including troop types right there. And yes, the point values are provided so you can figure out your own armies. If you wanted to, you could do that. And there's open order foot, there's close order foot, and then you've got open and close order mounted troop types. Take a quick look at the troop types here. So you've got archers, bow levy, light foot, light spear, rabble, raiders, skirmishers, warband. Those are all your open order foot. Close order foot is your artillery. Yeah, that's the one that can fire as well. Elite foot, that's a distinction. Heavy foot, horde, pike, spear, war wagons, warriors. Those are all your foot troops in two different groups, close and open. That's important to know, open and close, for combat results as well as movement, like passing through. And then you've got mounted troops, you've got bad horse, battle taxi, chariots, elite cavalry, horse bow, javelin cav, knights, and then for the close orders, you got cataphracts and elephants. And these give you the suggested number of figures per base, as well as the base size, the points value. Appendix B is all about combat factors. There is a downloadable play sheet. And here's an actual description. This is great if you're designing your own army lists or order of battle, or to understand better what the troop types represent. Like bow levy, it says open order, 2 points. So each stand is 2 points, and they're considered open order in the rules, and it describes them for you. Lightfoot raiders, so on and so forth. Horsebow, javcav, knights, so on and so forth. Appendix E, assembling an army using Meshwesh. This talks about how you interpret the free online army lists on the website. Okay, troop entries, their types, min-maximum. If they're battle line troops, they have deployment limitations. Restrictions, optional contingents like allies and so on. Required troop types you gotta have, those would be your minimums. Who your general can be, for instance. Like in my feudal English army, my general always has to be a knight, so it would tell you that. And here's an example layout of an army list. In this case, early 100 Years' War English. Yeah. Thematic categories as well as listed in the army list, where if you want plausible opponents for your army, that's kind of what it represents. Great for tournament use. One here is the Flower of Chivalry. You check that out and it'll list all the different armies that are included in that Flower of Chivalry listing. Medieval Western Europe. Embattled Isle. So yeah, there's your army lists. Now this is a really welcome ad. I remember in DBMM we had this same sort of section in the rules, and it was very nice to have. But this essentially does the same thing. So you can look up illustrated examples of various things, like what are flank attacks, tactical movement in enemy zones of control. We've got all these examples. And so far, I have not run into anything that the rules did not cover explicitly, either as an example here or in the rules. What defines being uphill, which is essentially defined by a crest line on your hills on your tabletop. And that shows you who's fighting up above someone else. And also whether line of sight is blocked, if it's crossing the crest line, so on and so forth. Here's an example of a battle card, what it looks like. Again, you can buy these separate. I might do a separate video on these, showing them all. They got their own rules book, and they got their own deck of cards that you can buy. And yeah, they look pretty fancy to me. Look at that. Here's one called Pack Trains and Herds. Well, that's the example they're giving you here. That's what the card looks like. Here's the details on the card's use. For example, selecting this card, the army list indicates if pack trains and herds is available to your army. The choice to use the ability is made during deployment. Cost is 1 point. Gameplay and rules changes. Right there, it tells you. This is a great addition to Triumph. I really like this. And the rest is the terrain cards. Now, you don't need the deck of cards, which, again, you can buy separately. You can use the provided tables in the rule book, and they're right here, Appendix H. You basically roll 2d6, like, for example, a red and a blue, and you look up the result, and that is your terrain card. That's where you can place your terrain, including rivers and coastlines. And this is a big section, as you can see. Fantastic. And then, of course, the all-important index. And there it is. That is the rules. Folks, that's my look at the Triumph set of Ancients Medieval rules. Fantastic. I mean, so far they got me pretty inspired, and I'm looking forward to getting Historicon, get into some tournaments, and get into some Ancients gaming once again. Boy, it's been a long time, but it feels pretty good. Again, look in the description below. You'll see some useful links to the Washington Grand Company, their YouTube and Facebook groups as well. Highly recommended as far as I'm concerned. And also, stay tuned in the future. I've got more videos planned, including some bat reps using Triumph. Good stuff, folks. Good stuff. And as always, make sure you subscribe and like, share, and comment as well. Let me know what you think about this set of rules. What's your favorite set of rules? Have you played Triumph before? Let me know in the comments. We'll talk to you guys soon. So remember, hang in there, folks. It's only going to get better. Talk to you soon.